Yeah, oh yeah, I'll do that in a second. So I've got my basic layout here, and now I want to start putting some of the main elements in. And so these are, for Revit, the things that are system families. Now if you don't know what a system family is, don't worry too much. Just think of them as walls, floors, ceilings and roofs. There are a few others, but they're the main ones. And you should be thinking of those differently to things like doors, windows, and columns maybe, which you'll add afterwards. So I'm going to go and take your screens over. Sorry, I meant to do that before, but I'll do it now. Yep. So don't worry, you'll get them back in a minute. And so, and again, this is a pretty standard process you want to go through with Revit, just establishing these main constraints before you then go ahead and add in the detail. So notice that my copied view didn't change name. The others were linked, so they've all changed automatically. But this one hasn't changed. So I'm going to right click and go to rename to give it a new name. And I'm going to add something extra. I'm going to put a number in front, just again to get you thinking about how these views get managed. So I'm going to call O1 level 9 DWG will do. And then notice how my level 9 CL has gone in before level 9 FL. Right, because it just puts them in alphabetical order. There are ways of sorting your views by height, but I don't want to show you that now. So a simple way of organising them by height is just to give them names that put them in that order alphabetically. So I'm going to rename this one, and I'm going to put in front of it O2, level 9 CL. So I want that to be second, so yes to rename. Level 9 FL, I'm going to rename and put O1. So now, again, yes to rename, and that goes before level 9 CL. Level 10 FL, I may as well rename at the same time and make that O3. So you just want to keep organising these as you work through your projects, just to make things easy for yourself. So going to the one that has the drawing, let's zoom in and have a bit of a look at the wall layout that we have there. And then you can see, again, the columns. Now, I was saying you should do the system family first, so that's your walls in most cases. But these are curtain walls. So the structure really is going to be defined by the columns. And so I'm going to put the columns in first, and then do my walls afterwards, and then the floors after that. So I'm going to start placing columns, but I want to measure, just using the measuring tool, and see what these are. I'd say the person who drew this wasn't being too fussy with the measurements. 723 by 532. Let's make it 730 by 530. Even that's not the greatest, but we'll live with it. So, okay, so I want to get a column in that's going to be that size. Anyone use the column tool up until now? No, you haven't. Okay. So, which of those would you think you'd be using based on what we've done so far? Oh, that's a good guess, actually. I thought you might say architectural, because for walls, you've been using architectural, and floors, been using architectural. But you're right. For this, columns, don't use architectural. Use structural where you can. It's usually better. Okay, now when you go to place columns, you'll see that there'll probably only be one loaded at first in your properties panel. You can see there we've got a UC, universal column, with a size we don't really need to worry about because I'm going to load in a new one. So just like a door or window, you can go to load family, on the ribbon there. And then don't go to columns. That's a common mistake people make. You need to go to structural columns. Okay, so columns won't work here. It has to be structural columns. And then concrete. And then concrete rectangular column. Now, it should come up with a list of sizes if we're lucky, otherwise it'll just load it straight in. No, I didn't give us a choice, that's okay. So you can see there, I can click on the properties panel and see a list of sizes there, and none of those are right anyway, so we're going to make our own size. So do you remember the dimension I gave you? 730 by 530, wasn't it? I think it was, but we can check that in a moment. So I'm going to go to Edit Type, Duplicate, and type in the size we want. So I'm going to put the smaller one first, 530 by 730 mm, and then change these B and H dimensions to those sizes. And there we are. So you can see that's fairly close to the size I want, or to the size that's shown. It's exactly the size I want, but it's close to what's on the drawing too. Okay, so now I want to make sure that I place this on the intersections of those two grid lines. But there's a common problem you'll have here when you place your first column, only for the first one. You've got to check that it's not set to depth. So up here, notice it's got the depth option chosen. Okay, because if you know the way engineers work, they tend to work down at first from the floor level to establish the structure that's holding up everything under your floor. Interior designers don't need to do that. So you need to go to height, usually, for your first columns, and then also change the height there to the level. So this is the height option next to height. Change it to the level above. So 03 level 10 FL. If you don't do that, you won't see your columns. So now I can just go and click on to the intersections where I have that column size. Now it may only be a few, yeah. And yes, they are. So what has gone on here? Who's made? So who? John. Oh, okay, yeah. Right. So yeah, it's. I mean, it could be that these are all different, but I doubt it. Let's have a look anyway. So, okay, so that seems like maybe the only column that size I can see for now. So I'm going to just cancel, and then go along and measure the next one. So 370 by, let's say 730 again, because that's what I used for the last one. So that the faces should at least line up. So yeah, 370. So okay, so that's okay. I can just go to column now. It's going to remember that I use structural columns, so I can click on the column button and edit type, duplicate, and then just make the new name 270. So if you're not used to using duplicate, this is obviously how you make your different sizes, always with duplicate. And sorry, 270 was 370, wasn't it? So edit type, and now I can just go to rename and change that. So I don't need to duplicate here because I'm going to change the one I've made rather than making a new size. And so there, again, clicking on the intersection, and we should have a few more that are this size. So that looks better. And okay, so for this one, we don't have a grid line, but there's only the one column there. So what I'm going to do is just place it on this grid line to one side of the reference plane, and then I'm going to click on the Align button. And then I can pick my reference plane and then pick the edge of my column, which will line it up exactly. Yeah, that's right, exactly. Yeah, it would be concrete. Okay, so this column here may be the same size. Let's measure it and see. God, you're kidding, it's not. Okay, so we'll make another size for that. So what is it going to be? 590 by 350, is it? Yeah, close enough. Yep, 350. Okay, so that's column, edit type, duplicate. So again, try and keep the smaller number first. Sorry, 350 wasn't it? By 590. Yeah, exactly, that's what I want to show you. Yep. So I'm going to rotate that now as I place it. So if I just hover over the intersection there and space until it rotates to the angle I want. Now this one is not centered either, so well, let's just move it across. So yeah, well that's okay actually, because this really should be the alignment edge. So yeah, but we can still line it up, so I can just use a line now and choose this face and then line the column up with it, and that's okay. Okay, so the next column, we'll assume it should be the same size. It looks like it's drawn a bit differently, but we'll just make it the same size so I can show you some other tools that you might not be using maybe as much as you should be. So I'm going to select this column. I've just pressed escape as many times as I need to cancel everything so that I can select it. And then I'm going to use the copy tool. So now the copy works in Revit just like it does in AutoCAD. You need to give a base point. So this will be the intersection between my two columns. And then my new point is going to be the intersection inside the column where I want it placed. So hopefully that can give you an idea about how you should use your base points. And then what's the bet? That's a different size again. Again, I'd say this probably doesn't have much to do with reality, but let's just go with what it's showing. So 700 by 500, yeah. Okay. So, well, you could, but see, you want to be tracing this drawing. Otherwise, you're going to be creating a lot of work for yourself. So, well, let's see. What was this one though? This is 530 across. Yeah. Yeah, maybe that one's close enough actually. Yep. So, okay. So what we'll do is, we'll go with that one. So notice there in the sizes we've got the size there that I made before. So I'll start by placing it on the intersection, and notice that now that the outside edge doesn't line up. So what I might do, just to rationalise it, is align with the outside edge. So I'm going to choose that reference plane and then the edge of my column. And then I want this column grid to still be centred inside that column. So I'm going to use move. So you might be used to just dragging things around to move them, but this is much more precise. So when you need to move something precisely, make sure you know to use the move tool. Again, my base point needs to be given first, and I'm going to choose the intersection there on the edge of that column, and then I'm going to come down to the midpoint of the column. So then we've got a series of extra columns that should all be the same size. What's the bet they're not? They look pretty close though. 500 across. So we'll say that they're meant to be the same. Okay, so I'm going to select this column and then use copy and show you another option, multiple. So when you tick multiple, you can keep copying without starting the command again. Now this time I'll use a base point on the column grid. Why not? The column grid should be centered on the column. Right, and now I can make the second point the end of the next column grid. So notice how the column that is being created is set out same distance from each corner. Now here we've got a square, so we need to make another column, and well, not quite a square. Let's say it's 730 just to keep it. Oh no. God. Okay. 710. No. Yeah, 710 by 660. Well, no, that one's, see, that's a different size. That's a different width. So we can go with the 730. So this is the problem. When you don't set things out accurately, you're actually creating work for yourself. People think if they just rush and rush and rush and draw like crazy and don't worry about measurements, that they're making things faster. They're actually making it slower in the long run. And it's a real problem. I used to manage drafting standards in a couple of offices. And so that was always a common problem with people. Mostly the architects trained in the distant past had that problem because they were never taught to be accurate. But then with computers, people generally are a little bit more accurate because they have that thought process. Okay, so I'm going to go to the component tool, so the column tool again. And we have, let's say, edit type. Yeah, so it'd be nice if we could have it at 730 so it's the same as the other width. And then we'll just adjust the grid again, I suppose. So, yeah. So 730 by 730 is what I'm going to make it, because it really would be a square, I'd say. And then I'll just place it off to one side, and that's a common technique with Revit. So now we can then line it up afterwards, rather than trying to place it in the right spot first up. So now with the Align tool, I can choose the reference plane, then the edge of the column, and then again the reference plane and the edge of the column. Now we've got to make sure the grid is still centered. So again, repeating that technique from before, getting the intersection. And here it's going to be a bit hard to pick up because the dashed line there is slightly off the column. So good trick there is to bring that grid down just a little bit so that the line crosses it. And now I can go to move, making sure I get the intersection, so you've got to zoom right in there and then make sure it snaps exactly to the centre of the column. So I know it seems fussy, but it will make sure you don't have these issues that I'm having at the moment where things don't line up and you've got all sorts of little numbers that aren't round numbers that make things difficult to work with. Oh, and so notice when I select this column grid now, I can check the measurement there and you can see it's 365. So we know that's half of 730. Okay, so now we've got to do the same thing with this grid. In fact, no, this one's okay because this one should be centered already because I've used the same measurement there, 730 going the other way. So you can see already how having a bit of a more rational process with those measurements is making things easier. So now coming along this side, we can hopefully do the rest without the same process. So 708, let's make that 730, and then this one is 350, so I think we've got a column that's that size already. So 730 by 370 is perfect there. So now space, and it should all start coming together. Now I know sometimes people think, oh, well, I'm doing interior design, I don't need to take it to this level and be as accurate as the architects or the engineers. You actually have to be more accurate because you'll be doing finishes, and if they're not specified perfectly, they don't fit, and you have to reorder them all. You've got a major issue. So you actually have to be more accurate in most cases. Yeah, that's right. Interior design, interior architecture are basically the same discipline. Yeah. Okay, so then we've got these columns in the interior here. So again, this would be really good practice managing types and setting your sizes to do that. So this one, let's say it's 530 by 530. And so back to column. Oops, I don't have that size, so I'm going to go and make one. edit type, duplicate. And by the way, normally the column setup, if we didn't have these unusual measurements, would have taken half the time. So there are actually tools, I'll just show you quickly, at grids. When you have a more logical column set up, you can place them all in one go just with that tool. But again, here we don't have that, unfortunately. And it's probably not a bad thing for you to at least once go through the process of placing each column by hand, manually, like I'm doing here. So that's basically got all of them except for the last two here. So I'll measure those. So what is it, 430 by 730. And that of course is another one we don't have. So again, good practice making column sizes. And once you've done this, you really understand why you duplicate and make new sizes all the time. And again, why you place them in the way that I'm going to again here. Sometimes it's easier placing something off to the side and then using the align tool. Well, because it's placing it on the centre, and I don't know where the centre is here, so it's easier just to place it to one side, because I want to line the outside edges up with something. And so I can use the align tool now and pick each reference plane after placing it. In fact, there, this reference plane, and then this one. Ah, no, sorry, this one needs to go to there. That's it. And then finally, we just have the last column, which I'm going to assume is the same size as the previous one. So I'm just going to copy that across. Yep. That looks pretty good to me. Okay, so looking at the floor plan, now I can see the columns there clearly without that drawing in the way. And then going to my 3D view, starting to get something we can tell is approaching a building plate. Close, but we've got to do a bit more. So the next major element that's really going to define the space is the the floor will, but I'm going to put the walls in first, just because that'll give us an edge for the floor, essentially. Yeah. Okay, so I've been telling you about this curtain wall tool. So we will make a curtain wall, but because we'll be out of time if I go through curtain walls today, we'll do curtain walls next week. So I'm just going to start with a basic wall, and this is a common process with Revit. So using the wall tool, walls architectural. So I'm sure I told you this before, if you don't know what the wall is, or it's an existing wall, use the most basic wall type you can. And so here, either generic 100mm or generic 200mm. Looking at our AutoCAD file, you can see there's not a lot of detail showing there anyway, and the depth of that is not much above 100mm. Yeah, well, it's probably not far off. Curtain walls would be about that, but you've got then the where are we? Sorry, this one. You've got the solid part underneath, which, well, maybe a little bit wider on the outside, but we'll work that out. So I think the generic 100mm is going to work pretty well here. And then we've defined the outside face of the building with those reference planes. So I'm going to use finish face exterior for my location line. So that makes sense. When you have, if you have an interior measurement, that's what you would use in finish face interior. No, we've got that reference plane, and we do have the interior there as well, but I don't want to draw that. I want to draw on the reference plane so that I'm passing through the edge of the column as well. Yeah. And then I'm going to set the height to 03 FL level 10. And start drawing. So notice I'm starting up in the top left corner so that I can go clockwise from that point and then trace just to the corner of each column. So I'm right-clicking in between each column to cancel and then start again. So remember, curtain walls are not structural. The columns are. And so we're going to have the columns exposed and the walls are just acting like infill panels in between those columns. So again, just by right-clicking and cancelling at the end of each wall, you can stop that wall. Make sure you snap to the columns, not to the drawing. And then start a new one on the next column. Later, what we'll do is we'll make a special wall type that has the solid section of wall below your windowsill and also the windows in the wall. You don't need to put windows in here. So don't go ahead and madly put windows in, because you're just wasting time if you do that. The windows are going to go automatically in as part of the wall, and that's really the advantage of using a curtain wall. Okay, so again, notice how as I draw these walls, I'm highlighting the column. It's an easy mistake to make if you snap to the drawing. So you'll see here, there we are. See how it's highlighting something, but it's not necessarily the edge of the column. So there, notice how that's the column. So just watch out for that. It's an easy thing to have it snap to the wrong thing. And here that wall just continues along somewhere, so I'll just do that to a random point. And then this wall, even though it's an interior wall, I can use the same wall type. We might even keep it as that. Okay, so this one here again will be a curtain wall. Even though it's an interior wall, you can use curtain walls for those shop front type walls, if you're going to keep it as that sort of glazed wall. But for now, just do it all. It's the same wall type. Just trying to define the space. We'll put some more walls in for the core afterwards as well. But again, really here, I'm just trying to define the main space. And then in this location here on the top corner of the column there, if I start from, well, I do need to start from there. Now if I go left, notice that the wall's going onto the wrong side. So do you remember what you have to do to make it go the other way? Well, you'd think so, right? Because if you're thinking of location line like justification, left or right, that's what you would do. But it's actually not the right thing here, because that's setting the exterior side of the wall. Now this is the exterior side, so I want that to be set that way. What I want is the wall to go onto the other side of this line. Space. So space flips it. So your thought process should be, what is the inside, what's the outside of my wall? And start with that, and then decide on your location line based on whether you're drawing that part of your wall in your building, whether it's the external face of the wall or the interior face. If it's an interior wall, it doesn't matter. It can be either way. So there's no external face with interior partitions, for example. Okay, so start with that, and then if it doesn't go onto the side you want, space to flip. Yep. And there we go. So I can draw that last wall, and that's really important. So if I select this wall, notice how it's got the grip there on the corner. Same with this one. So then I'm going to show you in the 3D view, starting to have a defined area. So a very last thing I'll just do there quickly is the floor. And so for this, I'm actually going to go to the floor plan without my drawing, and just click on the floor tool. If you want to, you can click on the arrow there and choose floor architectural, but the floor button will do the same thing. And here I'm going to leave it on pick walls. I'm just going to choose one of these walls, on each side. So I don't need to pick each of these walls, just one. Notice I'm picking on the inside edge. And again, just one on each side. So here, the side is going to be off to one side. We actually want to have some floor outside of the space as well, because we want to show the corridor and some other things. So instead of pick walls, there I'm going to use the line tool and draw a line down along that edge. Just a straight line. So again, your thought process there should be that you just need one edge on each side, and then you can use trim to join those together. So remember, trim to corner works just like fillet in AutoCAD, fillet 0. So I can choose now each of these lines in pairs to join them. Doesn't matter if they go through a column. Okay, so now when I join these last two together, I've got a closed shape. Right, so can you see why it would cause a problem if I'd chosen each of those walls going along? It would have been more work to join them together than just having one on each side. Okay, so again, now tick finish. I've got my floor plate. 3D view. And you can even leave it like that for now. Before long, you'd probably put a floor in for the next level. But just to start working and putting some of your design ideas in there, that would be more than enough to get you started. Yeah, so that'd be good. If you can get that done today, that'd be great. And then next week we'll look at putting the curtain walls in, and probably setting up some of the core and some more detailed elements as well.